Welcome to The Big Bite with Sunny and Shay. Unfortunately, Sunny is not here today. That's because he's not feeling too well. Many of you may know, if you're an avid watcher of The Big Bite on Britasia TV, that he's suffering with a kidney stone. So as soon as he's feeling much better, he will be back on the show. But if you would like to follow his journey, see how he's doing, then you can follow us on @Britasia TV or on @Sunny and Shay. That's SUNNYANDSHAY. But today, on the show, it's a very special show. Now, the one thing that we've always said to you is we do not shy away from any topic. And you have been getting in touch on social media, on the email, even on our YouTube channel as well, and commenting about Bapu Surat Singh. And you've asked us to talk about it. So today, we are going to do that. We have a 1-hour special with you on the topic of Bapu Surat Singh, but especially what he represents and what he's doing. To give you an update, he's been on a hunger strike since January of this year. And joining us in the studio to give us the full background on why he is doing this hunger strike. He, by the way, is an 83-year-old man, all the way from America, who is in India whilst doing this hunger strike. We've got Sukhvinder Kaur, spokesperson for Sikh Relief. Sukhi, thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Shay.
It's a real special show today because Punjabis across the world have been completely shocked by what Bapu Surat Singh ji is doing. But it's really important to say that it's not just Punjabis. We've had a lot of response from the non-Punjabi community as well. Can you give us a little bit of a background on Bapu Surat Singh? For those who've heard of his name, they may have seen the social media posts, but they don't fully understand what is going on.
Yeah, well, with Bapu Surat Singh, he's an Amritari Sikh gentleman, and his whole history has been seeped in tragedy that he has seen through his own eyes, really. So Bapu Surat Singh was actually originally arrested in the 1984 Darbar Sahib attacks.
Okay.
There's a very poignant picture that's, doing the rounds on the internet of Bapuji with his dastar, which was removed from his head, and it was used to tie his hands behind his back. So he has been arrested, he's been tortured, he's spent many years in jails. So he saw firsthand the brutality of the state and central government against Sikhs during the 1984 genocide. So, it's very important to realize that this isn't just a man who one day decided, you know what, this is an issue and I'm good. This is a man who has seen with his own eyes the devastation that Sikhs have suffered at the hands of the Punjab government, the state government. So now we fast forward to January of this year, where there's been a lot in the last 2 years about this whole movement of Sikh political prisoners. Now, the difference between a Sikh political prisoner and an armed political prisoner is that they are being accused and implicated in crimes or anything to do against the state and the sovereignty of India.
Okay.
So after the 1984 attacks, they began, and then we had the subsequent Indira Gandhi assassination in November of 1984, and Sikhs were made a target for that. There was a lot of emotion, there was a lot of riots happening across India, and especially in Punjab. And then following that, there was this, what I always call the decade of darkness in Punjab, where young Sikh men were picked up, they disappeared, they were murdered, they were beaten, they were arrested. And the charity that I volunteer for, we are testament to that, because we are working and we have released 180 Sikh political prisoners.
Wow.
And the reason we have released them, Shay, it's very important to remember, this is through the judicial process.
Okay.
We are not working outside of that.
Okay.
So when these cases are taken to court, they are found to be innocent, Shay. So if 180 prisoners are innocent, and we've got about 65 left.
Right.
And then nothing is being done. We have many prisoners, and on the one example, I have to share this.
Yes,
because this is
please.
one of the most this is the reason I volunteer for this charity, and I can totally understand why Bapu Surat has taken the steps that he has. 2 years ago, we released well, I say a used to be young man named Major Singh. Major Singh was 14 years old when he was arrested, Shay.
Wow.
He was tortured. He was imprisoned, and he was convicted to life imprisonment at the age of 14.
My goodness.
Now, when our team interviewed him, Shay, it was one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever watched, because...
Wow.
And to this day, if you ask him, by Sabji, what happened? Why have you spent so many years in prison? He goes, I can't tell you. I don't even know why I was arrested, but I do remember them tying me to a chair and beating me black and blue. I do remember them twisting my arms and breaking every bone in my arm, in my legs.
My goodness.
And it was one of the most, and I was like, this can't be true. This cannot be true. So one of our team from the UK actually flew out and spoke to him, and he recorded with horror. And what I would ask the Sangha to do is his entire interview is available on our YouTube channel, which is SOPW TV on YouTube, and you can see Major Singh's interview in his own words of what happened to him. His grandfather was imprisoned, his uncle was imprisoned, his father was imprisoned, his mother actually ran away with their youngest brother, because the mother actually said, she goes, to me, I knew at that time that I was never going to see any of the men in my household again. She goes, I had one son, and she goes, and I ran. She goes, I ran for my life. And she goes, the people in Punjab at the time, they had no sympathy for me and my son. They didn't want to help us. They didn't want to do anything for us. So we moved from village to village to village, living in people's stables. She goes, I would clean out the rubbish in people's houses just so I could feed my son one meal a day. This is the reality, Shay, of what happened in those dark days.
Right.
So you have Bapu Surat Singh, who saw all this, and you know, we've done the peaceful protests. We've had Gurbakh Singh protesting over the last 2 years. Then his hunger strike fell through, and I think Bapu Surat Singh was very, very distressed at that. And for him, this issue of political prisoners, he's worked quite closely with our charity over the years as well. And he had a few court appearances with us, and he's shown his support for Sikh Relief. And he got to the point where he was like, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to go back on my word. And now you're over 200 days in now.
Yes.
He's currently under arrest, but he's in hospital and he's being forced fed. The latest report was that he'd been tied to a bed using chains. No one is allowed to visit him. His family are being investigated and scrutinized, and no one is allowed anywhere near him, and he's being force fed. And this whole movement has been completely peaceful.
It's interesting because from a Westerner's perspective, you may not actually understand why is he being arrested when he's on a hunger strike. He's not done anything illegal. He is an American citizen in India. And of course, we've seen on the social media campaigns that there has been a media blackout in India with regards to what is happening in India. What would you, however, and I do completely appreciate, from a Punjabi perspective, you have empathy, you feel that pain for your fellow brothers and sisters back in India. But what would you say to those who are the cynics? Those who say, actually, whatever the Indian government did was right, it was within their judicial system. You know, it happens in America, happens in many other parts of the world where individuals will be arrested for political crimes, whether you and I feel that they are right or wrong. They have to go through the judicial process. It's the law of the land. What would you say to them that are saying what Bapu Surat Singh ji is doing is wrong, perhaps even, and these are quotes that have been seen online, saying that it's ridiculous to do this. He should be going through the right process that everyone else goes through, which is through the legal system.
And I totally agree. But then what I would say to the cynics is that this isn't a question of just Sikh political prisoners. Our charity might represent Sikh political prisoners, but Bapu Surat Singh says that this is an attack against minorities in India. So we talk about a judicial system. Well, we are working through the judicial system. Many of the things, because what Bapu Surat Singh is saying is those prisoners that have served their minimum term sentences. So you have, there's 14 convicts that fall under this under this bracket for the Sikh political prisoner side, but there's many, many across Punjab. And then you've also got to think about the fact that these cases have gone to court, recommendations have been made for their release. So their cases that have gone for premature release, recommendations have been made for several of the prisoners to say that I feel that they are no longer a threat to society. They can be released and be integrated back into society. Then you have the whole sort of human rights aspect of this case, and many people say, well, it's not a human rights. Well, I disagree, because in the Indian judicial system, India is a sovereign state. They are answerable to no one. They can do what they like. If we look at the Yaqub Memon execution that took place, now that we compare that to the Devinder Pal Bhullar Singh's case, now there's two very, very alarming things that are happening here, is that the other people that were convicted in the case, so you have Yaqub's case and you have Devinder Pal Bhullar Singh's case. In Yaqub's case, there was 11 co-accused. Why weren't they given the death penalty? And his crime is allegedly to have been the financing aspect of it, that he apparently financed the Mumbai bomb blasts. Then you have Devinder Pal Singh Bhullar, who's, if you actually look at his legal documentation now, guys, this is all available on Google. This is easily accessible information. 133 witnesses, Shay, says that Devinder Papula wasn't even the man that was implicated at the scene of the crime.
Why is it then, you know, there'll be a lot of individuals, you know, like most people, you look at your day-to-day life, okay? If you're living in this country, whether or not you're born here or not, you're thinking about your family. You think about your day-to-day, I've got to pay the bills. You've got, you know, your children, if you're married, you want them to go to school. These are the main concerns of most individuals who live here in the UK. Why is it then that we are living here, if you are from the Punjabi community or even not from the Punjabi community, and we're looking back to what's happening in India, and there have been protests here in the UK, specifically in London, outside of the Houses of Parliament. Why is it that so many people outside of India are standing up now and saying something needs to be done? That hasn't happened over the last 30 years. There are individuals who didn't even know about what happened to the attacks in 1984. They may not necessarily know about Indira Gandhi and the full situation behind the assassination, and then, of course, the Delhi riots, again in 1984. So is it all because of this one person, this 83-year-old man, Bapu Surat Singh, who's affected individuals in the UK, in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand? I mean, this has now gone worldwide.
Yeah. I mean, it's gone worldwide, yes, but the saddest part of this is that India doesn't appear to be even acknowledging it. So you have a double-edged sword. You think, well, there's so much attention being raised by the common man in the West. So we are the common man.
Yes.
But yet we have the British government who is not really talking about it, who's not making any official statement on it. We've had a few congressmen in America that have responded, and we even have a conversation from Barack Obama when he went to India, which actually did send out a warning to Narendra Modi, saying that you do need to look at how you are managing your human rights and how people are treated in this country.
Okay.
So there is acknowledgement that there is something wrong in India, but then I put it that are these countries, or the powerhouses in the major countries around the world, thinking, right, we don't want to disturb our trade relations with India. There are other agendas behind.
There are background issues. Okay.
So you have the people making a massive noise. You have the Sikhs here, the Sikhs in America, in Canada, staging protests all around the world. But they appear largely to be falling on deaf ears.
Okay, we're going to continue talking more about this. Now, if you're watching the show and you would like to share your opinions, then you can email us. It's info@bridasia.tv. Or if you would like to actually get involved with the discussion on social media, then do tweet @BridasiaTV. We're going to continue asking this question, what Sukhi has raised right now, which is why are our political leaders not doing enough to represent the voices of what we want here, specifically in what is happening in India? We'll come back straight after the break. Welcome back to The Big Bite here on BridAsia TV. Today we have a very special show. We are specifically doing a 1-hour show on what is happening in India with regards to Bapu Surat Singh ji, who is an 83-year-old man who's been on hunger strike for over 200 days. So since the beginning of January this year, he's been on hunger strike, and telling us more about the situation in Punjab, we're joined by Sukhvinder Kaur, who is a spokesperson for Sikh Relief. We're also joined now in the studio by Upkar Singh, who is from Kesli Leher. Upkar, Sukhi, thank you so much for joining me today. Now, before we went to the break, Sukhi, we were talking about Bapu Surat Singh ji, the fact that his hunger strike is specifically regarding a human rights issue as what is happening to Sikh political prisoners in Punjab. Upkar, tell us a little bit about what Kesli Leher does and why you are involved with what is going on in Punjab at the moment.
Just a bit of quick background first. A few years ago, we were the first to have a parliamentary debate on the hanging issue in India. We, the Sangat, and I say we, I mean the Sangat, because we're not a political body. We're a human rights organisation that work with diverse communities, and we're proud of that. We have done for 15 years. So we collected the signatures, presented them, had a debate in Parliament, and put a lot of pressure on the Indian establishment regarding the Bapu Singh Puller's hanging. That worked very well. We're not saying we take the credit for all of it, because that was just a small part of what hundreds of people are doing out there.
Right.
And this was the people's voice, and this is what we're proud of. Now what we're doing is we're saying, yes, every organisation are doing their bit, but we need to challenge our parliamentarians here. We need to have this establishment on our side in this fight for human rights. And it's not just for Sikhs, it's all the diverse communities of India. Over 50% of India is minorities. And I'll give you a good example. You've heard all the Sikh stories.
Yeah.
There was Dr. Sai Baba, who's a professor, 90% disabled. A year ago, he just got abducted by the police and disappeared into Tihar jail.
Right.
90% disabled. He's only got movement above his neck. What was his fault? His fault was he showed dissent by exposing the land-grabbing techniques being taking place against the Adivasi community, who are tribal people, one of the last tribal people of India. And this is Modi's government doing that. And that's his crime. So, on the other hand, you've got Sikh prisoners. There's examples, very simple example is, do you remember the Canadian airline coming down?
Yeah.
Well, they've never been able to pinpoint who was responsible for it. Now, the Sikhs know, the active Sikhs know, that that was not a Sikh plot. That was staged to make the Sikhs look bad. Yet, there are people in jail in Punjab who are being told, you have to admit to this, you have to say you know that the Sikhs did it, and we'll release you. And they're being held without any charges, by the way.
Okay.
And they've been there like 20 years now.
I want to follow up on just 2 points, and Suki, please do come in on this. Yeah. From an outsider's perspective, what you're talking about, very frank, a lot of people would say it's a conspiracy theory. In order for us to kind of come back and perhaps back up some of those particular, we're talking about the Canada situation there, is the idea that you do need proof. Yeah. That said, there will be a lot of individuals who passionately agree with what you're saying.
No, I agree.
In India, perhaps the judicial system doesn't always do the right due process to its victims and also to its prisoners as well. But let's, if we can, for a moment, bring the focus back on the Sikh political prisoners and what's happening right now in India. Suki, why, there's a lot of people sat here, and we've seen it on social media, that are saying they want our political leaders, they want our politicians from this country to be putting pressure on the Indian government, to be putting pressure on them to do something specifically about Bapu Surat Singh and his hunger strike and these Sikh political prisoners. Why is it then that the government, do you feel, and also SOPW, is not getting involved perhaps enough, in your opinion, as they should be?
I mean, to be honest, I think I was very, very disheartened when we saw last year the disclosure information regarding the UK government's involvement in the Darbar Sahib attacks. What we had was a very, very short period where it seems that the government was making the right noises and talking to the Sikh community. Then what we have is their report, which is not an independent inquiry, saying that, well, actually only one officer was sent and he didn't provide any advice, and he came back and we have no involvement, and the door was shut.
Now, just to comment on this, your organisation actually was involved in disclosing those documents. For anyone who isn't fully understanding, and I will say it's okay, the Golden Temple, this is what we're talking about. I appreciate you call it the Darbar Sahib, but for anyone who doesn't fully understand that, we're also basically talking about the Golden Temple, aren't we? What were those particular documents that were disclosed? In
February last year, KSU spent a long time investigating, trying to find information regarding the British involvement. We were paying a journalist to go in there and to get that information out. We got that information. We released it to the public. And we released it to the wider public because there was a lot of pressure that we want to take ownership. And we said, no, this is not about ownership. KSU will not take ownership of this either. This information belongs to the community. It's their information. It's their fight for human rights. Once it was out, we went through and if you remember going back when Cameron first came on television, he said, how the hell did these documents get out? He didn't use the word hell, but that's what he meant. That was his first prerogative, to find out how the documents got out.
And
what
then did those documents reveal?
That they revealed very clearly that there was involvement from the British government. Margaret Thatcher, within hours of the attack coming to an end on the Darbar Sahib, when 10,000 Sikhs were slaughtered, congratulating Indira Gandhi on her successful mission. And subsequent to that, other letters also prove, and there's the whole dossier of documents that have come out since then, which collectively show that it was all done, all the support given to the Indian government from the British government was for the billions of trade that they wanted to carry out with India. And at the same time, it's also been substantiated now that the British establishment very clearly sent out a mandate saying that Sikhs should be portrayed as terrorists.
And this was when? This was
last year in February.
Last year in February.
And I was in the meetings with parliamentarians. So Jeremy Hayward was asked to carry out this inquiry. And when he came to the crunch, I asked him a simple question. I said, Jeremy, what if 4 letters come out? Are you going to be objective with this inquiry? And he said, well, why don't you share the other information you've got? I said, well, you know, where you should be objective and just do this inquiry properly, carry the inquiry out properly, we won't have to come back to you then. You won't have more exposures then. So the narrative was already there, to cover up everything as quick as possible.
There are a lot of people, Sukhi and Upgar, and I mean, you can both kind of respond to this, that would say that whatever has happened in the past has happened in the past. Bad, I'm not saying it's all good. But there's a lot of individuals from both the Sikh community, Punjabi community, because let's remember here, not everyone living in Punjab is Sikh, but they were all affected by what happened in 1984, who believe that it is time, 31 years now on, to move forward, to accept what has happened, but to move forward. However, we still, you know, are looking back and reflecting upon, as you say, perhaps there was British involvement, perhaps there wasn't. We're in 2015 now. Yeah. There's a lot of individuals who just want to move forward and want to get on with their lives and understand that this was a genocide, which the Indian government has recognised. We must say that. They have finally recognised this was a genocide. To take that and to just leave things as they are. Why is it that you, both yourselves and many others, are pushing on our political leaders here to now be pushing back to India, to now say we've still got Sikh political prisoners who have been affected since 1984, since what happened, and actually to say to them, we need to do something from here, because surely this is an Indian issue. This is for those who have Indian passports, who live in India. We're here in this country. We need to look at our own issues that we have here.
You want the blunt answer to that?
Yes.
Because we're still being persecuted. Even today, you're not safe in Punjab. Even today, you will be targeted for speaking out, for asking for rights. If you go back to the 30 years narrative, the Sikh narrative, why we were branded as terrorists, we were asking for very simple rights, you know, state rights, water rights, rights to be able to run the state to the betterment of the people. It was not a fight for freedom, but we were branded as terrorists. Why? They wanted to cover that. It's all about suppressing the minorities in the states and keeping a complete grip on India and running it the way they want to, in a corrupt and abusive manner.
And it's not enough to say that, okay, we've acknowledged that it's a Sikh genocide. To have that acknowledgement, but then not understand the knock-on effect that that genocide had. You had illegal, like this TADA Act. I always go on about the Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Act. This act was put into place simply because of the insurgency that happened in Punjab, and it was used as a means to pick up and arrest and imprison innocent Sikhs who had done no crime, but it was misused so badly, and these 14 prisoners are still under that act. The act has been repealed over a decade ago, yet convictions are still being upheld. So if you have declared that it's a genocide and you've admitted it's a genocide, you also then have to deal with the repercussions of that genocide and all the other elements that tied into that genocide, and that has not happened.
No.
Okay, we're going to pick up Sukhi and Upgar on this particular point. Now, if you would like to get involved in the social media, then do tweet us throughout the show. It's @BritAsiaTV. We've tried our best today to give you a background, if you're not fully aware, of what has happened in the last 30 years. But now we're going to take this discussion forward, and coming up next, after the break, we're going to be talking about what you can do here if you would like some change from our political leaders, but also whether or not we should be asking our political leaders to do anything when it comes to India. We'll be right back straight after the break. Welcome to The Big Bite here on BritAsia TV. If you're just tuning in, well, we've got a 1-hour special show today. We've been inundated with messages with regards to what is happening with the hunger strike by Bapu Surat Singh ji in Punjab. Now, he's an 83-year-old man who's been on hunger strike since January of this year, so that's over 200 days. And you've been asking us to discuss it, so that's what we're doing. If you would like to get involved with the discussion, don't forget to tweet @BritAsia TV, or you can also email in your responses as well, info@BritAsia TV. Now, joining us on the couch to give us further information and perhaps any ways that you can get involved, we've got Upgar Singh from Kesri Leher here in the studio. We're also joined by Sukhvinder Kaur, who is from Sikh Relief, spokesperson of Sikh Relief. And joining us on the couch as well, we've got Jazz Singh from 1984 Genocide Coalition. Now, Sukhi, throughout the show, we've had a complete history from yourselves with regards to what has happened in 1984, the genocide which has been recognised by the Indian government, and of course the hunger strike that Bapu Surat Singh ji is doing. But there's one particular question that a lot of people are asking here in the UK, and this is from the Punjabi community and also from the non-Punjabi community as well, and that is, why should we be putting pressure on our political leaders and on our government to get involved with what is happening in Punjab? Why should we here in fact, the British government in general be getting involved with what is going on in Punjab and in India in general?
Well, if you look at the whole narrative of the British government and their involvement in other countries' affairs and matters, I don't remember anyone protesting for the UK government to get involved in the Iraq War, which was this war on terror, as they like to call it. We've never protested for the UK government's involvement in the Israel-Palestine conflict that's been going on there. The UK government has gotten involved in many international problems. The issue of political prisoners, what Bapu Surat Singh's actual campaign represents, is the issue of political prisoners, prisoners of war. If we have declared that the Sikhs did go under a genocide in the 1984, then surely these are prisoners of war. I mean, so why then does this matter with India become, oh, well, it's an internal affair? Well, surely the problems that were happening in Libya, in Syria, all around the Middle East were internal affairs. But England and our British government seems to want to pick and choose which bange, as I like to say, they wish to get involved in, which then leads you to, you know, sort of assume that they're only looking for where they have something to gain. So is it in the British government's best interest not to get involved in Punjab? What is going on in the background that we don't know about that makes England or Great Britain very, very reluctant to want to assist not just Sikhs but other minority communities? We have the Gujarati community, we have the Christian community here, and they have relatives. And we had Balbir Singh Bains, which we mentioned on your show before, who was a British citizen who went to Punjab, and he had no support from the UK government. If anything, the UK government would not allow him back into this country, and that paints a very worrying picture for me as a British Sikh today, that tomorrow I'm on your show. Am I an activist by talking about this? But will India then see me as a terrorist? And then when I decide to go to India next, am I going to be picked up and thrown into prison for simply raising valid, worrying statements about what India is doing to its minorities?
Now, Sukhi is specifically talking about our special show that we did at BBC London. If you missed out on that, then you can listen back, bbc.co.uk/Sunny and Shay. But just picking up on that specific point there and taking this discussion a little bit further then. Last year, we did remember 100 years. It was a centenary since World War I. And within that, there was a big reflection from the Sikh community here in the UK, but also from the British government as well, it must be said. And a lot of individuals here who remember what Winston Churchill said, saying that the British government and actually British people are very indebted to the Sikhs who gave up their lives and were heavily involved in not just the First World War, but also the Second World War as well. So within that, I guess there is a strong history, isn't there, with the British government, the British, and specifically Punjabis and Sikhs. But let's move it forward then. If somebody sat right now on the couch watching Brit Asia TV, perhaps didn't fully understand what is happening in India, but now wants to get involved, not in a negative way, but in a way that they feel can make a change. Jazz, can you tell us how people can do that from here in the UK?
Well, first of all, you need to educate your MPs, which obviously MPs know about it anyway, but they're just turning a blind eye. And then you need to make a wider campaign to the local people, the Sikhs and the non-Sikhs, to why we want the MPs to intervene in India. Because if the British government can go and intervene in any other business, then why can't they intervene in the Sikhs? Because if you look at it, nearly 250,000 Sikhs been murdered, right? New Delhi, in prisons, and even like young as 18 years old, child's been murdered in the Golden Temple. So we really need to get together and tell the rest of the world that what's happened to the Sikh, because there was news blackout. If you pick up you go to the reference library in India, you will never find even one single person or even one single news in any of the papers that the Sikhs were murdered in New Delhi in 3 days, 30,000 to 20 to 30,000 people died there, and there's no news on it. Even if you go to the police stations, none of the police officers took any complaint or FRA, what they call it in India. Nothing happened. So we need to tell the rest of the world that why are you turning a blind eye to the Sikhs? If they can talk about 9/11, the whole world knows about 9/11, and why can't they talk about what happened to the Sikhs in '84? And plus, after Mrs. Gandhi's assassination, everybody just been turning a blind eye towards that. So I personally think that we can do a lot sitting here throughout the world and, campaign as a mass campaign and get everybody else involved, Amnesty International involved in there as well, because they know Amnesty International's figure is that 250,000 people have been murdered by Indian government.
Okay, you talk about this idea of getting everybody together. Upkar, please comment on this, because recently it was in one of the national papers. You may have seen it in the Daily Mail, where, of course, we have seen outside the Houses of Parliament there were hundreds, if not thousands, of Sikhs who gathered with regards to protesting. But they were labelled as Sikh radicals. Now, if we are talking about, as a community, coming together and doing peaceful protest, and then trying to push back towards our MPs, at what point do we as a community recognise that we will be seen, you mentioned earlier on the term terrorist or radical, and at what point do you think we will as a community be taken seriously with what we want to be heard with?
Shay, let me take you back to that day. I was actually there, and thanks to Sikh Channel, I was actually presenting for them there, and I made a very blunt statement that day. My first words were, I do not agree with this. Yet not one leadership there challenged me on that day. And quite frankly, you know, it's a case of 30 years of the same thing. We've been appealing to the British government. If you remember the discussion with Rob Morris the other day on radio, where he said, write to the parliamentarians. He had written to the Foreign Office himself twice. He hadn't had a reply. If an MP writes to the Foreign Office, appealing for them to write to India to talk about our rights and human rights in India, and he's not getting a reply, what hope do we have as people?
Okay.
So on that note, I'm going to say, we as a collective community, we're seeing India on a self-destructive path at the moment. India belongs to all the communities and minorities, collectively. We have a responsibility. We need to take this forward in such a manner and say, right, whoever you are, if you're from India, you have families linked in India, we need to work together.
Okay.
Modi's government is on a very direct path of Hindu nationalism. When he was in the state government, he was supporting the RSS and the other organizations. The whole ideology is based around, you know, almost like Hitler's ideology of converting and driving a national issue.
I think
and the Channel 4 did a documentary on that, let me remind you, and they exposed that openly. But today, we need to sort of come together collectively and say, we need to bring this to us. We need to stop this genocide.
But I have to come in just for a moment.
Go on,
because,
go ahead.
you talk about, I mean, for a lot of people, they may see that as an extreme view. It's really important, I believe, and I think a lot of people will agree that when you talk about religions, it can be very sensitive.
Of course it is.
Is it not better for us to just talk about this on a human rights basis? Because there are many Hindu brothers and sisters out there who completely support the cause.
No, but their silence is complicit, though.
Okay, so are you actually categorically saying that nobody from the Hindu community has supported?
I would have to I think I understand what Baisab is saying, because I mean, I was on the Nihal show a couple of days ago, and I was when I was having my discussion, there was a Hindu gentleman who called in, and he actually spoke about how his parents actually gave shelter to several families when mobs were coming to murder them, basically. So I don't think amongst the Sikh community there is any sort of, you know, hatred towards...
No, I didn't say that. Don't quote me in that manner.
No, obviously, I know you don't mean it like that, Baisab. But what I'm saying is what you're saying could be...
No, let me finish, though. You haven't let me finish on that point. So if I may, we have a collective responsibility, and silence is complicity in a crime.
Okay.
Now, there was a debate in the House of Lords just before the election where minorities got together, Hindus got together, I was invited to, like other people, where they said, not in our name. That was a very strong message. Despite that, Modi won, because he had a very good economic policy, which appealed to everybody. Fine. But today, if the communities of India want to save India from this self-destructive path, which is inevitable at some point, we need to come together. We need to put pressure on the MPs in this country.
Okay.
And on that basis, Kesri Lad, we presented an EDM 257. This is appealing for MPs to sign up to it, to have an open debate on the issue of human rights violations in India. And that will encompass also the basis and the principles on which we do trade with India. So every time they do make a deal, it'll come on the forefront.
Okay.
And that also means that all communities, including Hindus, need to take responsibility for what's happening in India.
Okay.
I'm not saying they're all complicit in in that direct manner. But silence is complicity.
Okay, so just as a kind of clear point there, and Jazz will come back because I would like for you to pick up on this as well.
Yeah.
What you are saying is it's not just for the Sikh community to talk about this, it's for all communities.
Yeah.
And actually what we're saying is if you happen to be from the South Asian community in general, whether you are Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, you should be coming together with a uniform voice.
That's right.
That's what I'm getting from that. Just wanted to make that very clear point. We're going to come back, we're going to pick up on this discussion point, and I know, Jazz, you've got to follow up on that as well. We're going to continue discussing how you can get involved. We have mentioned the fact that you should be putting pressure on your MPs, or what does that mean, and will that actually get us anywhere? We'll be back straight after the break. Welcome back to The Big Bite here on Brit Asia TV. We've got our final part of our 1 hour special today. We've been talking about the hunger strike being carried out by Bapu Surat Singh ji in Punjab. He's an American citizen who is 83 years old, and he's specifically doing this hunger strike for the release of Sikh political prisoners, but also on the basis that he wants to support any minorities who are being violated because of their human rights. Joining us on the couch today to talk about this further on, we have Upkar Singh from Kesari Leher. We also have Sukhvinder Kaur, spokesperson of Sikh Relief, and we have Jazz Singh from 1984 Genocide Coalition. Now, before we went to the break, Jazz, you wanted to pick up on what Upkar was saying with regards to how we can push back to our MPs and try and get our MPs to represent what we want to be taking place in India. So what would you like to say with regards to
Well,
that?
it's EDM 257, yes. Well, if everybody get up and just send a simple email to their MPs, just saying, please support EDM 257.
Okay.
And that's all they have to say. They're not done the right. Nothing, just a simple email.
Right.
And your MP would know what to do next.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you say that, there's a lot of cynics, you know, of course we had the general elections and people always go on about every couple of years we get the general elections, we hear from our politicians, and then after that you never hear from them again. How much do you believe us pushing back to our MPs is really going to significantly make a difference?
I don't think you will at all.
Well, even...
So is there any point then, if Sukhi is saying she doesn't think it's going to make any difference, is there any point us even doing it?
Well, of course there's a point of doing it, because when you push our MPs, if you get 100 MPs, we'll have another debate in the Parliament.
Okay.
Yes? So that debate, they'll have to debate on what's happening, and Bapu Surat Singh will expose her, and plus the MPs will have to speak to India as well. And India would know, yes, you know, there's something going on, because every time a British Parliament say anything about the Sikhs in Parliament, the alarm bells start ringing. So then what happens? India government or India House get onto the MPs saying, oh, what are you talking about? Why are you bringing this issue up? You know, so it does make a lot of difference. All right, maybe it won't make a difference for them to get them out of prison, just to, like, you know, just having a debate in there. But of course, it will make some kind of difference.
It's an open dialogue.
Yeah, that's right.
Before we go to yourself, Upkar, I know you want to respond to that. Sukhi, if you don't think going down the MP route is the right way, what is the other right way in your perspective?
I think that we always forget that the people are a majority. Parliaments and governments are a minority. A government should always serve its people. And we sometimes forget as individuals how powerful we are. Well, my biggest advice is that anyone who's watching the show today, you've had a taster of everything that's happened, not just on the Sikh narrative, but on the narrative of minorities across India. What I always say is arm yourself with knowledge. Yeah, and Bapu Surat Singh, the biggest thing that this has done is raise awareness. People who didn't know about this issue, didn't know about human rights violations in India, and now waking up to it. Research it, look into it. We have everything at our fingertips nowadays. We have smartphones, we have Googles, we have Twitter, we have Facebook. The world has become very, very small. And what we can do, not just with Sikhs, we can start flagging up every single incident of human rights violation that is occurring in India, and start making the people aware to it. Media plays a massive part. I mean, like we discussed earlier, India has a massive blackout. So I call my relatives in India, no one knows who Bapu Surat Singh is there. But if you ask someone outside of India, he's like a massive icon. Look at the massive difference on what media and social media make.
You're saying that, but there's a lot of individuals, I mean, we've talked about this on our show in BBC London a few times as well, the fact that sometimes the biggest negative for us is ourselves. The biggest people who put themselves back is ourselves. And I'm talking about our local gurdwara. I'm talking about our local committees. You're talking about the one thing I think is fair to say from this discussion today is you are asking for a uniform voice, for everyone to come together.
Yeah.
If our own temples in this country cannot come together, how on earth are we going to manage to bring our own people together? You have different fragments of society. You've got our elder generation saying one thing. You've then got our younger generation saying one thing. Then you have disparities between the younger generation who are perhaps Amrit and those who are not. You know, these are disconnects that are happening right now here in this country. So on the one hand, we're saying, okay, we can email MPs. That's tick the box. On the other hand, you're saying, get rich. We've done that. How are we then going to bring our communities together if our own temples are not bringing them together? Please go ahead.
I'm going to support what Sukhi said. What we need to bear in mind is that our gurdwaras are pretty much run by many badals in this country. They're no different. They're all there for their power.
Sorry, for anyone who doesn't know who Badal is, do you want to explain that?
Badal is the Chief Minister of Punjab, under whom most of the atrocities are being committed in Punjab.
Okay.
Although he was in Punjab jail himself, in prison, it was the people who brought him out with pressure from the community. Today he's now attacking the same community and the same religion and the same collective of Punjab.
But there would be those who support him who would actually disagree with that.
This is a wider discussion. We can have that another day. But in gurdwaras, the majority of gurdwaras in this country are, essentially small badals.
So what are we saying then?
Their vision is very limited. It's not beyond the room, the office they command, and the chairs they command in. If you look at the Sikh as a nation, the Sikhs as a nation, in history, it's always been the people who've brought the revolution, not the establishment.
So not the gurdwaras, not the community leaders.
They take our lead from the people. Now, I'll give you a very good analogy on this one. Take grooming as an issue in this country. Jazz Singh has been working on that. I've worked on it for like 35, 40 years.
You're talking about sexual grooming here,
sexual grooming. We've been working on that day and night in our own towns, in our areas.
Right.
But there was complete denial from the gurdwaras. We couldn't speak in gurdwaras. We couldn't give a leaflet out at one time. But today, it's been discussed openly. Why? Because organizations have brought it to the fore, they've ignored the gurdwaras and just gone straight to the public. We need to do the same thing with this issue. Alongside the education, as Jazz said, and the way the Sukhi's approach, we also have to hit the Parliament. The reason being, the more exposure the issue gets, the more people know about it. Governments are shaken by other governments intervening and having discussions on their issues. It's a huge issue. As Jazz said, one discussion in Parliament here, it's like a nuclear bomb going back off in Delhi. They hate it. And then they have to react to it. And there's a bigger picture on this too. The Indian government is dying to get onto the Security Council. British government have veto power on that to stop that. Can you imagine a country that has the record, not if parallel, not far behind China for its human rights violations, they want to get onto the World Security Council? That would be a mockery of human rights across the globe. So there's far bigger implications here that we need to deal with. But like I said, this EDM highlights all the minorities. There's a lady who's been on a hunger strike for 14 years.
Wow.
She's abducted by the police, chained, given force-fed, then released. Bapu Surat Singh has been in that condition, chained to a bed for the last 6 days. And he's been arrested many times before that. But this time they're force-feeding him through drips to make sure that he doesn't become a martyr. But they're doing us a favour. Why? Because the cause lives on. The exposure, the highlight of the issue is picking up pace. And now it's down to the people to do something. If you care for that country and care for the people and the plight of that people, you need to raise your voice as individuals. Don't expect organizations. We've done this for 30 years and we've failed. We've failed miserably. We as the people have to come together.
Jazz, would you like
Can
to
I just add a few things to
Yes,
to
please.
why everybody should get involved, right? I'm going to be very brief in this, right? Now, if you look at 1984, when Mrs. Gandhi was assassinated, about 500 Sikh women were taken as prisoners, and they were taken to a secret place, and they were stripped naked, and then they told them, look, if you try to get away, we'll cut your chest off, and then slogans were saying, oh, you Sikhs, you claim that you saved the honor of the Hindu girls in the 18th century and the 17th century. Now come and try and save the honor of your own Sikh ladies, right? Now, then one police officer, who was a Hindu, right, he went and rescued those women. And when he came back, they said to him, what did you do that for? he was sacked. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why everybody to get involved in this EDM and on human rights. And on the other hand,
You're
if
saying that's the reason because what people do come together, even despite of your religion. I
Yeah,
think
that's
it's
right.
a really important point to stress, isn't it? It's not about religion as
it's
much
not
as
about
we
human
keep
rights.
saying. It's
Yes.
about the human rights.
Yes.
Go
and,
ahead.
And no, like if you look at, there's a pind in near Haryana. I don't know what the name of the pind, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The whole pind was wiped out over a night. There was 35 families living in there. Ground zero. Everybody was like killed, and over a night, bulldozer, and that's it. And we got to know about that after 25 years.
Wow.
Right? And that's the reason why we should get involved. And for example, if Mrs. Gandhi hadn't been assassinated, then she was going to go on war with Pakistan. He had already arranged all that.
Well, I don't want to focus on that if we can't, because we can't know of an actions of somebody who's no longer here. It's a wider discussion, but it's also an interesting point, isn't it? I think, and it's the right point for us to finish on. If I can get your final brief points on this, is the fact you've made it really clear in your opinion. I know that there will be people watching this show who will disagree, who think that the right way to go is via Al Gurdwara, but you raise the point that actually sometimes you need to just get the people together, and actually going outside of a religious establishment does mean that you reach the wider community, and that's also an important aspect, isn't it, as well? I know that Kesri Leher does actually do a lot of human rights work, not just for the Indian community, for any minority communities across the world. So, final point, if anyone wants to get involved with Kesri Leher and how they can do that.
EDM 257 has been presented on the 15th of June in Parliament. You, the people, can be the voice for human rights, for the rights of people to live peacefully, with dignity, wherever they live. And now, this EDM highlights all the minorities of India and the plight of the people there. All you have to do is write a simple email, and there's a website for parliamentarians to contact. It's called Contact Your MP. Go in there, write 2 lines word, please support EDM 257, and that's it. That will get to your MP. And if you have a bit more energy than that, you can write to your MP, local MP, and say to him, we expect you to support the EDM 257 because we've supported you for the number of years you've been an MP. It's time to give something back. You know, for hundreds of years, the Sikhs have sacrificed themselves for this country and for Europe. It's time you did something for the people too.
Thank you so much, Edgar. And also, Sukhi, with regards to Sikh Relief, I know you mentioned earlier on, alongside our guests here, that you do go through the judicial system in India, which can be a very long process. Sometimes it can take many, many years, if not decades. If anyone wants to get involved with Sikh Relief and perhaps go through another route, I appreciate we are talking about EDM, Early Day Motion 257.
It's very important work.
But how can people get involved with what Sikh Relief are doing from the ground?
Well, we're very, very big on social media. Like I said, the work that we do relates directly to the Sikh political prisoners and fighting their cases through the judicial system. No matter what country you are in, you cannot bypass the judicial system to release someone from a prison. Once they are in that system, you have to work through it no matter how hard, how long it takes, and that's what we have done with Maharaja's Garba. So please check out our social media, because these are real people, these are real prisoners. I mean, you know, Bad Singh, Hardeep Singh, Varyam Singh, Lal Singh, Shamsher Singh, Davinder Pal Singh, Pullar, Gurdeep Singh Khera. These are all human beings before they are Sikhs. They have families, they have children, they have mothers, and they have been away from their families for decades. It's time to bring them home. Please tune into the work that we do. Check out our social media. Our Facebook pages are Sikh Relief, and our prisoner project is called SOPW, Sikh Organisation for Prisoner Welfare. That also has its own Facebook page. Please check us out on there. We're also on YouTube. Search out Sikh Relief and SOPW. And please check out our website, which is www.sikhrelief.org. That's sikhrelief.org.
Thank you so much. And finally, Jazz, what would you like to say with regards to your organisation?
Well, we work together with Kesri Leher, so if anybody does want to get in touch to know any more information, all they've got to do is contact Kesri Leher members and they'll update them.
Fantastic. I have to say a big thank you, Jazz, Sukhi and Abgar, for coming in and spending this time. It's obviously a very important cause that you're all passionate about, but it's something that we do need to have more discussions, and I'm sure in the coming weeks, if not months, we will follow up on this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Quickly add, Sikh Relief, SOPW, is the only project that's successfully carrying this work out. And they have been for years. And we need to support it. And if we don't support it, it's to our detriment.
I think that's a very interesting and valid point to end on. Thank you so much. I also would like to give the email address for Kesri Leher if it's the first time you've heard about them. It is secretary@kesrileher.co. So that's KESRILEHAR. Now, really important, if you have been watching the show today and you've missed out on some particular aspects, perhaps you've missed out on some of the names of the organisations, then do make sure you head to our Twitter page @BritAsia TV or @Sunny and Shay. That's SUNNYANDSHAY. We will ensure to put all of the information up there. If you would like for us to follow up on what we've been discussing today with regards to Bapu Surat Singh ji and the wider discussion on human rights issues in India and on Sikh political prisoners, then do email us info@BritAsia.tv. We assure you we never shy away from any subjects and we will pick up on it again. And finally, if you missed out on our show, on our special on BBC London, then do listen back, bbc.co.uk/Sunny and Shay. But for now, we're signing out. We'll see you very soon.
ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦੱਸੇ ਮਾਰਗ ਤੇ ਚੱਲਦਿਆਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਰਿਲੀਫ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਮਨੁੱਖਤਾ ਦੀ ਭਲਾਈ ਲਈ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਅਨੇਕਾਂ ਕਾਰਜ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਕਾਰਜਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਆਪਣਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦਾ ਯੋਗਦਾਨ ਪਾਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਸਕਰੀਨ ਤੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਅਕਾਊਂਟ ਨੰਬਰ ਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਦਸਵੰਧ ਭੇਜ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।